More than 80% of missing persons cases eventually get solved, bit by bit. But sometimes the truth is so complicated and dark that it's hard to even believe. Gabby Petito, a young and energetic girl who was on a road trip with her fiancé Brian Laundrie, suddenly disappeared. This disappearance turned into one of the most complex and controversial cases of 2021. In the midst of it all, traces of lies, bitter confessions, and family secrets slowly came together like pieces of a dark puzzle, creating a story that will never be forgotten. Today, we want to dive deep together into the mysterious depths of this case and talk about everything from the moment Gabby disappeared to uncovering the painful truth behind this crime. Gabby Petito grew up in a small village called Blue. She grew up in Blue Point, a small town in Long Island, New York. Gabby's parents loved her very much, but they were separated, and each of them had their own household. So Gabby was kind of like a wanderer, going back and forth between her mom's and dad's houses. But Gabby was really close not only with her biological parents, but also with her step-parents. Everyone who had known Gabby for years said that she was amazing, both in looks and personality. She loved butterflies, art, nature, and photography. Her favorite color was aqua blue, and her favorite song was Let It Be by the Beatles. She also spent a lot of time on the internet. She used the internet like a resume, a diary, and even a mirror where she could see herself. Brian and Gabby also met online during high school. Brian had posted a lot of drawings of comic book characters on the internet, and it seems that, in a way, they connected through art. They became friends and stayed just friends for several years. Then, in July 2019, things got serious and they started a romantic relationship. They shared a love for nature, national parks, and places that were nothing like where they grew up. That's why they decided to try a new lifestyle, living in a van which had become really popular on the internet. In 2020, they bought a van, turned it into a tiny apartment, and hit the road, traveling to different places. Their videos really blew up during the COVID pandemic. They hoped that one day, through their videos, they could become famous travel bloggers and make a lot of money. When you looked at Gabby and Brian's social media, it seemed like their crazy adventures were so simple yet so cool that you just couldn't take your eyes off them. They kept going places. They would sit on the edge of cliffs and post tons of flawless photos and videos. But behind closed doors, inside that van, things were falling apart behind the scenes. During these trips, Gabby was always in touch with her family. But suddenly, starting from August 25th, 2021, she lost contact with them. A few days later, on September 1st, 2021, Brian showed up. He went to Florida to his parents' house with the famous van alone. Gabby's parents finally, on September 11th, 2021, announced that Gabby was missing. This news quickly spread across social media. Friends, acquaintances, and even strangers all tried to share Gabby's name and face as a missing person. In fact, the hashtag #FindGabby trended and got millions of views. Gabby was just a young girl who didn't look older than 23. Five days later, the police held a press conference and asked Gabby's father, Joe Petito, to come and say a few words. Joe said, "The only thing I want from all of you right now is help, because we still haven't reached our goal. And that goal is to bring Gabby home safe and sound." Joe Petito was trying to stay strong and composed, but you could totally tell from his words. You could feel the sense of despair and pain he and the rest of his family were going through. Gabby's mom said, "As a mother, I was always worried from the start about my daughter wanting to go on a road trip, but I felt safe because Gabby and Brian were together." But gradually, the story started to involve Brian Laundrie as well, and that made everyone suspicious. People started to wonder how Brian came back alone, and crowds began gathering outside the Laundrie family's house. The Suffolk Police Department issued a nationwide alert to find Gabby. They wanted to find Gabby alive no matter what, and the first step in the investigation was gathering information. Cell phone antennas showed that Gabby and Brian were last in Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming, USA. Then they started a field search of a vast area, an area of 20,000 square miles or 52,000 square kilometers, with rescue and relief teams. Meanwhile, people and reporters, they were chanting in front of the Laundrie family's house, shouting, "Where's Gabby? Brian, where is Gabby? Laundrie, where is Gabby?" That's when it became clear that the Laundrie family was staying silent and had no intention of helping. They only released a statement through their lawyer, expressing hope that Gabby would be found and returned to her family. But they refused to say anything to the police or the media, and Brian Laundrie also remained completely silent. At first, the police only considered Brian a person of interest, not the main suspect. So when Brian refused to talk to the detectives, they didn't force him. But this made the case even more complicated. I mean, who in their right mind would actually do that? Go on a significant trip with the true love of their life, only to come back completely alone, and then not say a single solitary word about it to anyone. Meanwhile, the official Twitter account of the Northport Police Department posted an important update. The post said, "In today's world, one of the most important steps in an investigation is to thoroughly review someone's social media to get more information about them." So that's exactly what was done with Gabby and Brian's social media accounts. Of course, there was nothing on their pages that indicated something bad or criminal had happened. It seemed like they had a perfect, flawless relationship, traveling all across America. Everything looked energetic at first, but the truth was something else. It was as if the relationship was toxic from the very beginning. So maybe they should have looked a bit further back at the original posts from their very first road trip together back in early 2019. Gabby, in her first posts, had posted pictures of herself in different states across America, and Brian was nowhere to be seen. Gabby naturally knew exactly what would attract an audience. Nobody wants to see a pretty influencer in a relationship, so Gabby tried to show a free-spirited, independent lifestyle. But did this cause any tension? Was Brian upset that he wasn't in these pictures? There's something really strange about Gabby's posts. It's that in late October 2019, when Brian and Gabby arrived in California, Gabby made a post where she's taking a photo at the Santa Monica Pier, while Brian posts on his own page, "LA is trash, I know. You all know very well that LA means Los Angeles, but why did Brian feel that way? Was it because Gabby wasn't posting any pictures of Brian? That wasn't the reason he thought LA was trash. So maybe the sparks of a toxic relationship started from things like this. Clearly, Brian's jealousy and Gabby's desire for independence created some problems in their relationship. After these investigations, the Northport Police in Suffolk County, New York officially named Brian as the main suspect, and they started monitoring the Laundrie family home to see if they could find Brian and talk to him or not. During this time, Brian was seen once, but he wasn't questioned at all. But on social media, people started leaving comments and making videos about Brian. They were asking Brian to do the right thing and speak up. A lot of people found it strange that they hadn't taken Brian in, at the very least to ask him a couple of questions. After the first trip, Jared with a Nissan Sentra. By the way, at that time they still hadn't taken it. Brian tried to convince Gabby to go to Florida together, to live there. For Gabby, going to Florida truly meant leaving her friends, her family, and the entire support network she had built. But for Brian, it meant Gabby would be completely his. In any case, Gabby agreed. In Florida, Gabby on the dating app Bumble met a girl named Rose Davis. They became really close and spent a lot of time together. In a way, they didn't need anyone else but each other. And this made Brian even more sensitive. Rose says Gabby would come over to my place a lot at night. Whenever she fought with Brian, she would come to me and we'd sleep in the same bed. This whole thing drove Brian crazy. Brian was sensitive and controlling, very possessive and competitive, and he was extremely jealous too. He even took Gabby's ID card from her once, so she couldn't go out drinking with Rose. Whether it was at a restaurant, a bar, or anywhere else, he would even come pick Gabby up himself and wouldn't let Rose drive her home. One time, when Brian was really upset about Gabby's relationship with Rose, he and Gabby ended up having a fight that turned physical. Gabby ran away to Rose's house. Gabby told Rose about Brian. Sometimes he acts out like this and gets violent. But Rose says the situation is not normal at all. Brian is trying to control you. Anyway, after Gabby and Brian lived together in Florida for a while, COVID had really peaked, and maybe they were both a bit frustrated and fed up, which is when the idea of living in a van came to them. So Gabby bought a van and hit the road again with Brian. The van life lifestyle is really popular with a lot of couples. And this way, Brian was also allowed to be part of Gabby's online world. On the other hand, by leaving Florida, Rose's interference was no longer an issue. But something that was supposed to turn into a romantic journey full of new experiences ended up becoming more like a pressure cooker, full of stress and tension. A month after their road trip began, life started to get complicated. In Zion National Park in the state of Utah, Brian posts online and says in his post that Zion proves humans can ruin anything, even when they're trying to preserve it. This place is a beautiful park, but unfortunately, it's full of the wrong kind of people. This is exactly Brian Laundrie's style. Brian was very pessimistic about people. He hated people. He was alone and he liked to be alone. Meanwhile, Gabby was the complete opposite. She was outgoing, sociable, and easygoing and friendly. But no one knew what was going on behind the closed doors of the van between Gabby and Brian, because they are, in fact, actually truly. On August 12th, 2021, Gabby and Brian went out at 9 in the morning to a coffee shop in the city of Moab, Utah, so Gabby could work on their van life page. But then Brian got really angry that Gabby was working and connected to the whole world. So he tries to punish her by taking her phone away, basically cutting her off from the world. This was a kind of psychological blow to a girl who used to be confident, but was gradually losing it. Her spirit was breaking down, and right around then, an urgent call was made to the Moab police about a reported altercation. An anonymous person reports seeing a girl and a boy getting into a fight with each other. But then they got into their car, which was a white van with Florida plates, and drove off. This girl and boy, who were actually Gabby and Brian, apparently started arguing over their phone. Brian took the phone from Gabby, and Gabby tried to get it back. Brian hit Gabby, and Gabby tried to fight back. Then Brian got into the car and locked the passenger seat door so Gabby couldn't get in. But Gabby forced her way into the car so Brian couldn't drive off without her. Then Brian started driving angrily and they sped out of Moab. They almost hit a curb along the way. When police pulled them over, everything was recorded on the body camera. The officer, with the camera on his chest, asked Gabby why she was crying. Gabby blamed herself, apologized, and said it was a personal issue and they argued a little. Brian said, "I almost hit the curb, and Gabby distracted me." Gabby also confirms this and then apologizes again. The police ask Gabby to get out and tell her to sit in the police car. Gabby does. These moments are just like a victim who keeps blaming herself and tells the police, "Sometimes I have OCD and I get a little nervous, I feel bad and get stressed out. Today I was working a lot on my laptop. It was my own fault that I got hit because I have OCD." Brian has probably told Gabby many times that she's moody and that she has issues, and in this way it gets into her subconscious. Gabby, this idea gets imposed, and it's a story we hear from a lot of victims. In these situations, victims usually try to defend their partner. When the police talk to Brian separately, Brian also blames Gabby, saying she's crazy. Then he tries to hide his stress with jokes and laughter when the police notice the scratches on his hand. Brian tries to downplay the situation and says it was just a minor argument and he doesn't want to press any charges. Of course, Gabby's face was also red. The police say they received a report that Brian hit her, but Gabby says Brian was just defending himself and that she started it. This way, they quickly and mistakenly concluded that Brian was the victim in this situation. Whereas if they had paid attention to Gabby's tears and demeanor, they would have realized that wasn't the case at all. Gabby had taken a photo of herself on her phone, showing her face bruised and clearly upset. The kind of photo women take in these situations. Usually, it's to have evidence and to prove that the problems are serious. But unfortunately, in many cases, the woman just blames herself. This is a classic example of domestic violence. In the end, they usually just let them go. That's how it usually ends. The officers even joke around with Brian. They kind of buddy up with him, acting like, yeah, all women are crazy, saying things like that. It seems that Brian is a master manipulator, and we saw how he convinced the police. But on the other hand, this clumsy handling by the police gives Brian the courage to become even bolder and keep doing what he's doing. After Gabby went missing, when this police body cam video started circulating on social media, the story exploded like a bomb. Unlike the police, people quickly conclude that Gabby is the victim of domestic violence, which is why she's so upset. This makes everyone want Gabby's missing person case to be solved as soon as possible. A lot of people drove long distances and came in front of the Laundrie family's house to join the protest. Some even said this house should be burned down. The police, on the other hand, only responded after 5 months and released a statement. They said that the officers who handled this incident made several unintentional mistakes. Some even argued that if Brian was considered a victim of domestic violence, they should have arrested Gabby. If they had done that, everything could have changed.
Could have. It's unbelievable if they hadn't let it go.
In any case, the incident involving Gabby and Brian's altercation was very important. People who work in this field say that perpetrators of domestic violence usually don't just stop being violent all of a sudden. In fact, things often get worse, and this was a worrying aspect in Gabby's case. After this altercation, Brian flew to Florida and went to his parents' house. Meanwhile, Gabby stayed in Utah. During this time alone, Gabby could think without Brian yelling at her, hitting her, or starting a fight. She could consider whether it was time to end her relationship with Brian. Phone data. Phone records show that during this time, Gabby was talking to some of her old friends, some of whom were men. Also, while Brian was away, Gabby posted a video from their first van trip, which showed Gabby and Brian genuinely happy together. Maybe by posting this video, Gabby realized that all the good things in their relationship were in the past. But the question that comes up is, why didn't Gabby leave Brian after he came back from the trip? Unfortunately, this is a story that has been repeated over and over by victims of domestic violence. Victims are often truly in love with their abusers and don't want their relationship to end. However, the most truly dangerous part of an abusive and toxic relationship is when a victim finally decides to leave it. On August 23, 2021, after a 6-day trip, Brian returned from Florida, and he joined Gabby in Utah. And considering how quickly things escalated afterward, I think Gabby had finally decided to leave Brian. That is, she had hit right on Brian's biggest fear. Brian's biggest fear. After Brian and Gabby were in Grand National Park, they camped at Grand Teton, drove for about an hour, and arrived at a Tex-Mex restaurant in Jackson. The couple sitting next to them, as well as the waiters, said that Gabby and Brian were constantly arguing during lunch. They even argued with the waiter about the food and didn't pay for their meal. After the incident at the restaurant, security cameras show that they went to another place, a grocery store. This is where things get even stranger. In the surveillance footage, Brian slams the car door, and it's clear how angry he is. In the store, they walked around a bit but didn't buy anything. Of course, one of the cameras caught Gabby putting something in her bag without paying at the register. Maybe Brian had asked Gabby to steal something. Brian claimed he didn't have any money, even though his bank account had about $20,000. Let's go back to after Gabby went missing. It was around this time that the police noticed. Brian Laundrie had also disappeared, and his family reported him missing. In fact, even though the police were watching the house, Brian Laundrie had left through the front door. He got into the Mustang parked in front of the house and left without anyone noticing. Apparently, the police had mistaken Brian for another family member. Brian had taken a rifle that belonged to his father, Chris Laundrie's collection. He took it with him as well. But once again, the story blew up on social media, and people from all over the country were searching for Brian. Protesters camped out in front of the Laundrie family's house. They started calling the family dirteries, meaning dirty and corrupt. They had changed it. But alongside Brian's disappearance, the search for Gabby was still ongoing. After weeks of searching and not finding their daughter, Gabby's parents were almost hopeless. They had lost hope. On the morning of September 19th, 2021, seemed like it was the day Gabby would be found. The rescue team was on the north side of the Spread Creek area in Grand National Park. They had focused their efforts, and a mounted team entered the river to search. Because they had a better view. They saw something that looked like a person under a blanket near a temporary camp. It was probably Gabby's body. Gabby's stepfather, Jim Schmidt, was also in Jackson, Wyoming, waiting for any news about Gabby. They confirmed the body belonged to Gabby based on her clothes and personal items, like Gabby's tattoos. Then, Joe Petito, Gabby's biological father, posted a photo showing his daughter with angel wings. He shared the news of Gabby's death on social media. In this way, Brian Laundrie had left the body of his beloved in the wild to be consumed by animals. After Gabby's body was found, the autopsy revealed that she had been strangled. This is the method that men often use in domestic violence cases to kill women. It's the peak of the perpetrator's power and control. Abdi's silence shows his guilt. Police investigations revealed that after the murder, one of the first things Brian did was contact his parents and immediately request a lawyer. He tried to make it seem like he had argued with Gabby and then returned alone. Meanwhile, he had also exchanged messages between his own phone and Gabby's. To make his story more convincing, Brian tried to do this in those messages. He made Gabby look like the one at fault and spoke gently himself, portraying Gabby as aggressive. Police investigations also showed that when Gabby was no longer alive, Brian transferred $1,000 from Gabby's account to his own. At this point, Brian wasn't just a mere suspect anymore, and the police could now charge him with clear and undeniable theft. Meanwhile, Brian's sister, Cassie Laundrie, appeared on Good Morning America on October 5th, 2021, and said, "I don't know where Brian is. If I did, I would tell the police. I don't know if my parents are being honest or not. If they are, they should tell the truth." So, Brian's parents, Chris and Roberta Laundrie, also joined the search team for their son. They went to the area in Carlton Reserve with a federal agent and a local officer. Just to clarify, Carlton Reserve is a protected natural area in the state of Florida, USA. Brian's parents knew their son and knew what places he liked to go to. They went to a spot where the family had been before. After about a 40 to 45-minute walk, Brian Laundrie's remains and his personal belongings were found. This news was officially announced on October 20th, 2021. Brian's arrest would have been a chance for justice to be served. But that didn't happen, and Brian once again escaped the law. He never actually had to look Gabby's parents directly in the eye and truly pay for the terrible crime he committed. A lot of people say that the Gabby case had a positive impact on the internet, but I think that when the comments pressured Brian to turn himself in, he chose suicide over facing the consequences of his actions. But what do you think? What's your opinion about the Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie case? Write your thoughts in the comments. That's right, Brian Laundrie shot himself in the head and committed suicide, leaving a lot of unanswered questions in this case. Next to Brian's remains in the Carlton Reserve, there was a backpack, a notebook, and a gun. In the notebook, there was a confession letter where he wrote, "I heard a scream. I couldn't find Gabby. I called her name. Then I found her. She was gasping for breath and her body was very cold. I don't know how severe Gabby's injuries were. All I can say is that she was in a lot of pain. I ended her life. I thought that way I could spare her from suffering. This was what Gabby wanted, but now I realize I was wrong. I was terrified and in shock, but from the moment I decided to end Gabby's suffering, I knew I couldn't go on without her. Gabby, we lost our future. I can't go on without you. But this was just another one of Brian's lies. If this was supposed to be sparing Gabby from suffering, so why did Brian leave the body of the woman he loved there to be eaten by animals? When Brian's confession letter was published, everyone said in unison that it was nonsense. This false confession only reopened the wounds for Gabby's family and everyone who was searching for her. Because even in his final moments, Brian never confessed to Gabby's murder. He never admitted that he strangled her. Brian's behavior shows psychopathic traits. He never took responsibility for his bad actions. He lied repeatedly, never showed any real remorse, and never truly cared about Gabby or her family. In 2022, the Petito family decided that since justice hadn't been served against Brian, they would file a lawsuit against his parents, the Laundrie family. Chris Laundrie, Brian's father, revealed that on August 29, 2021, his son called him and said that Gabby was gone and that he needed a lawyer. The Petito family claimed that the Laundrie family hid the truth about their daughter being killed by Brian and sought damages. They accused them of intentional infliction of emotional distress and mental anguish. But ultimately, in February 2024, the Petito and Laundrie families settled the matter out of court, and the details of this agreement remain confidential. Murders like Gabby's are slow-motion killings because they happen gradually over time. Thousands of incidents. Before Brian strangled and killed Gabby, thousands of wounds had already been inflicted. This murder wasn't just a physical one. First and foremost, it was a killing of the spirit and mind. Even though Gabby and Brian's seemingly flawless social media videos really threw the case off track and kept it from being seen as a case of domestic violence murder. In this regard, Gabby's father, Joe Petito, tries hard to keep Gabby's memory alive, and now the Gabby Petito Foundation not only helps victims of domestic violence, but has also assisted many missing persons. So, it's important that in today's society, the elements of control and violence are redefined, because if we don't recognize the warning signs, it could all happen again.